Behind me is my 1994 Mitsubishi 3000 GT vr4. It's a 3-liter twin turbo. It is my dream car. However, it's broken, and I don't know why. Last episode when we worked on the car, we replaced the timing belt in hopes to fix the timing issue. And, well, the timing issue was fixed, but the car didn't start. And today, we are giving it another shot at fixing it because I think I figured out the solution. And all it is, I think it's just this. My name is Phil Super. This is my 3000 GT. It's my dream car. We're getting it running. Let's go. So last time we worked on the car, I attempted to replace the timing belt, and I did it successfully. It took me a good long while, but I got it done, and it made zero difference to how well the car was running because the car didn't run before and the car still doesn't run after. So I decided that I was going to go through and start running some more of the basic checks, checking things that I knew already worked, starting with the spark plugs, which is why you can see the different colored wires. Now, when I was first diagnosing the car, I did check the sparks, and I did see and confirm that there were in fact sparks coming from the spark plug. So I knew that wasn't an issue. However, once I replaced the timing belt, it didn't start, and I went back to check spark again, and I wasn't getting any spark at all, which brings us to what I believe may be the solution. It's this, which is a crank position sensor. Now, this is a $25 sensor, and what it does is it measures the crank position. No duh. But it's a sensor that is a common issue with this engine, and it's one that will cause the car not to have any spark, because if it doesn't see the timing correctly, it will not send spark signals to fire. So here's how we're going to attack this today. It's going to be relatively straightforward and a little bit of the repeat of doing the timing belt process, but luckily we don't have to take the entire timing belt system off, so it's going to work out in our favor. Hopefully. We have to start by coming into the driver's side footwell of the car because the sensor is located behind the crank pulley. So you're not actually going to be able to see it, but pretty much straight behind that hole is where the crank position sensor is. So what we need to do is we need to loosen this pulley up, which isn't too hard. It's just 2 bolts. Loosen the middle bolt, loosen the top tensioner bolt, drop this down, take the belt off, pull off the crank pulley, this separate part on the end, and then we should have access to replace the crank position sensor. If that all goes smoothly, as it absolutely should, I hope, then the car will start right up and we'll be able to start test driving it and fixing some of the other smaller issues that I need to address before we can start driving this car a lot more consistently. So without further ado, like and subscribe. Let's go. I want to drive my dream car. Alright, currently we have the old one on the left and the new one on the right. I can't really tell visually if the old one is actually broken or how bad it is in comparison, but it is pretty dirty, especially compared to the fresh, clean one. So we're gonna go ahead and get this fresh, clean one on, plug it in, get everything hooked back up, and that's really all it takes. So here's hoping that nothing goes catastrophically wrong. Well, in what seems like it's only been 2 minutes, we got it back on. Now, however, I personally, not this video, have to leave in 5 minutes. The video's not ending. Stick around, por favor. But I got it installed just like that. It's actually fairly simple. Just pull off that big crank pulley, then trim the cover back. I couldn't actually get the cover off, but I did just trim it, which it's not going to affect anything. But I got access to the 2 bolts, pulled the old one out, put the new one back in. Zip tied the wires out of the way because they're actually longer wires than the original one, so I had to just finagle them. Anyway, it's all connected. Battery's connected. I'm going to try to start the car, and this will let me know whether or not I'm going to have to cry for the rest of the night or smile. So hopefully we smile. Hopefully the battery's not dead, so it actually cranks anyway. But like I set you guys down, let's try again and see if this car will start. Here we go. My jump pack's not charged either. Alright, luckily for you guys, it's a quick cut and we're gonna try again now. Alright, I didn't get to charge the battery overnight, but it's been charging for about 3 or 4 hours now, so it's got a little juice, but I do have my jump pack charged, so we're gonna add that as well. And we should be able to get ourselves a good crank and determine whether or not we're gonna spend the next few hours crying in disappointment or celebrating. Let's find out. makes sense. Well, that's pretty much a bummer, but we're not out of the woods yet because we could at least check something that we think we may have possibly fixed, which is the spark. So the next test that we have to do is we're gonna go ahead and pull out one of the spark plugs, set it on the valve cover, and see if we can see if there's any spark coming into it. Because if there is, that at least means that the crank position sensor fixed that issue, and we could go on to the next issue, which may be the fuel pump, which is my other suspicion. Although I don't think it is the fuel pump, but nonetheless, that would be the next place to check. So we're going to go ahead and pull out a spark plug, see if we're actually getting any spark. It smells like fuel actually right now. I don't think fuel's an issue. So these looks like they're pretty coated in fuel, so I think we're fine in that regards. Let's go ahead and just set it on here and see if we're getting any actual spark. All right, so we'll ground that out there. Then I'm gonna use my phone to see so I can get a closer view, but I'll show you guys that clip when we try and start it. All right, let's give this a go. All right, so I did a little more testing and I think I found the issue, and it is related to spark as I said before, but I think I narrowed down exactly what's causing the problem. So if you remember when we tried to start the car, it almost sounded like it was wanting to run, like really, really, really close. But I think I figured out what's going on, and I think I can fix it today. So here in this lovely engine bay, there's a few things that control where the spark goes. Now the crank angle sensor is one down below that I mentioned, and it's what I replaced, but that also controls fuel. And so fuel is smelling a lot better now that it's going through, so that may have been an issue, but it wasn't the ultimate issue. So I went ahead and ran the spark plug test like you guys saw, and you saw that there was no spark coming through. Now, I stopped there, and that's where I was stupid. I went inside and I started to do some thinking, and I was like, wait a second, coil packs. There's 3 coil packs. There's a chance that the one I was testing was out and the other one was working, because I then remembered that when I first checked for spark way long ago, it was the first cylinder that was getting spark. But then ever since I did the timing belt, I've been checking this cylinder right here, which I believe is the 3rd cylinder, but please don't quote me. So I went back and checked the 1st cylinder, and this is what happened. So as you can see, we got spark in the 1st cylinder. So I went ahead and checked this cylinder over here, no spark in this. Now here's the key thing about that. These 3 cylinders all go to 3 different coil packs. This first one goes to the top one here. This one's getting spark. The second one here is not getting spark, and this 3rd one here is not getting spark, which this means that at best, we're getting 2 out of these 6 cylinders getting spark. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and pull off these 2 coil packs right down here and replace them with new ones. Now they aren't actually new ones, but if you look behind me, this is all the parts from my other 3000 GT project car. This is the entire engine torn down. So all I need to do now is dumpster dive through this entire pile of mess and see if I can find where I put the old coil packs, because then we could grab 2 of them, throw them on the 3000 GT, and hopefully it starts. Because if it doesn't, once again, more crying. Anyway, let's go find some coil packs and get those on. Why? Alright, so after some tests, we're not getting spark to any other coil other than one, which is sending a spark to this cylinder right here, and then the adjacent one in the back. I'm not exactly sure which one it's sending it to, but it doesn't matter. Here's what's going on now. So I swapped out a few of the coils with the extra ones like I said I was going to, and it didn't make any difference. Now, specifically, that does show us something, because it didn't make a difference in the sense that this cylinder still got spark and the other ones did not. So I took the coil pack from the first set, the set that was originally on this car that was giving spark to this first cylinder, and I put it on the other coil pack. Pretty much what I was doing was I was just taking 2 known coil packs and putting them on to see if the coil packs were an issue, and they're not. So at this point, we've eliminated spark plugs, spark wires, and coil packs. Now we're going to continue to work our way backwards, and the next thing on our list to check out is something called a PTU, which is what I have right here. It's a power transistor unit. Now I have another one of these in the engine right now, but this is the one from the donor car, and we're gonna give this one a test because we'd have to pull that other one out to test anyway. But what we're going to do is we're gonna go ahead and hook up a battery, grab a multimeter, and run through each pin to see if they're getting resistance and see whether or not they're opening or closing, because this sends signal signal to the coil packs for when to fire. Now, if this is all fine and we put it in, there's no difference, we're gonna go back to the ECU and then open that up. Because the system in-hole works from the ECU sends a signal to this, which sends a signal to the coil pack, which sends it through a wire to the spark plug, which is all based on the timing from the cam and crank position sensors. So we haven't changed the cam sensor, we haven't checked this, we haven't checked the ECU. Those are really the only three things we have left to check on the ignition timing system. So we're gonna go ahead and hop inside and start with this PTU system. So in case that last section was a little bit confusing, here's a more detailed look at what's going on. So our power transistor unit here has 6 different spots here where it's sending power to the coil. Yes, there's only 3 coils, but essentially you have your positive and grounds. The reason why there's 6. Anyway, what we are going to do is we're going to take the C battery that applies 1.5 volts and we're going to go ahead and connect that to this, as well as use a multimeter on the ohm function to try to see the resistance between the pins. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure it without having the battery attached, which then should give a reading of resistance that this is closed, and then we're going to go ahead and open it up by connecting the battery, which then should show that there is less resistance. So that is what we're going to do now. Check to see, make sure that this can even switch back and forth, because if it can't, this is our problem issue. And if it does work, then that means we do have to go further back. Now, I actually have tried running the car with this specific PTU, but in the car with no success. So what I at least know is that if this is bad, that's a good sign that our other one is bad as well, which then means I can order a new one to go ahead and replace this. So not a bad place to start. Let's go ahead and check the resistance between the pins and see if we can find out exactly what readings we're getting and see exactly if this is the problem child. So we finished testing this out and it turns out that this actually works. It just works. So what I did was I went ahead and measured the resistance, as I said, when it was closed versus when it was open. And when it was closed, we're getting about 0.7. Oh, holy crap. We had resistance. I'm not even gonna try to do the conversion. It's set on the 2000 kilo ohm setting, and it got a reading of 0.47 on all 3 pins across the board for all 3 different coil packs. And when we did apply the C volt battery, the 1.5 volts to open up the relay, it did open up when we saw the ohms, the resistance essentially drop. So there's no resistance, which means that once it was getting a signal, it would be sending it to the coil packs. So this means that we can go back further along the wiring system, which is the ECU, because the ECU is what sends a signal to the PTU. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that out and see if it has leaking capacitors, because that is unfortunately a very, very big problem with these cars. It's not as much a rare issue with the ECUs of if it will go out, it's more of a when these ECUs will give out. Now the plus part is, if it is the ECU, we can pull off the old capacitors and solder in some new ones. It may come to that, that'd be the cheapest option. So we're just gonna go ahead and pull the ECU out and see if it is actually leaking. Unfortunately, even if it's not leaking, it still may mean that it's bad. So we're gonna go ahead and just pull it out now. All right, let's go back out to the garage, to the car, take off the ECU, and then come back inside again. All right, so I have the ECU completely taken off. Well, completely taken off. I have it out and I have the cover off. I'm wearing rubber gloves just in case I don't have any static discharge, which would be quite unfortunate. What I'm doing now is I'm inspecting the capacitors to see if I see any signs of leaking, which could be an issue. And right away, I am seeing that this one right here is leaking. Now, this very well could be our issue. I have to double check and confirm that this is one that could cause an issue. Nonetheless, any leaking capacitor could cause problems. I have a picture here. However, this one goes, I believe, to the 93 Mitsubishi 3000 GT, and mine's a 94, which is when I switched over to the 2nd generation. So I'm not sure if the ECU is different. I think it's a little bit different. Just based off the picture, it looks a little bit different. So I'm just trying to find the right orientation. Is it this? I'm not sure which way this is supposed to go. But I am seeing one capacitor leaking, so I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can find another diagram of what my specific ECU is supposed to look like so I can compare that and see. All right, so I did a little research trying to find a diagram, and I realized, well, I don't really need to, because pretty much what anyone says is the capacitor in the middle, which is the one that I showed you guys, if that one's leaking, good chance your ECU is no good. So where do we go from here to try to narrow this down specifically? Well, I have a 1993 twin turbo 3000 GT, and from what I've read, those ECUs are semi-interchangeable. So what this means is that, assuming it's a 4-plug ECU like this one on the table is, I can take my 93 ECU, put it in my 94, and the car will start. However, I can't actually really drive the car. The engine will run fine, but it doesn't trigger the radiator fan, so it would just overheat. But if I can get the car to start with the other ECU, it does mean that this ECU that we currently have is the issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can pull the ECU out of my other car. Can't film it because it's honestly, you just can't see anything, and you just saw the process. You pull the panels off, pull the ECU out. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out, see if it's a 4-plug ECU. If it is, I'm plugging it into the other car, and I'll meet you guys out there. If not, we'll be back inside. So, all right, see you soon, hopefully outside. We're back inside, which is bad news, unfortunately. Well, we're back inside with, unfortunately, a little bad news. I have the 93 ECU pulled out, and if we compare it to the 94, there is one extra plug on the 94 that doesn't work with the 93. So unfortunately, they're just not compatible. So there was a theory out there that you could still run it without the radiator fans working, but unfortunately, it doesn't work. Now the circuit board on my 93 looks fine, but unfortunately, again, that doesn't mean that we can actually run it because it's not compatible. So what I did do is I went ahead and I ordered myself a new ECU, which cost me a decent amount of money, but nonetheless, it's one that actually can be tuned. So it gives us more potential down the road. So that is unfortunately the conclusion that we're at here today. So it brings us to the point where we think we now have another area that could be fixed. We had on our current ECU a leaking capacitor right in here, so they're bound to leak anyway, so we might as well do the ECU upgrade. Fortunately, the price of just over $1,000 ain't cheap, but we tried replacing the coil packs. We tested out our PTU and found out it was fine. We checked a bunch of other areas, and this is the point where it seems to be failing because everything past the ECU seems to be in good working order, including the condition of the wires, which I did check. So, unfortunately, it's a bummer place to end. I hate ending like this. It sucks, honestly, to be able to put in a bunch of work and then not get to a conclusion that we want. But we do have another area where we can start to look at. So, that's what we're doing next time. The ECU should be in sometime probably in the next couple weeks. I do have another project in the meantime, a little short one, episode 1, that probably honestly won't come out for a couple weeks as well. But I have decided that I'm just gonna start working on the 3000 GT on the cosmetic side. So I figured I was gonna wait until after I got the car running, but I was gonna do it eventually. Plans to get the car running keep getting pushed back further and further. Might as well start attacking getting this thing looking good. So with that, I apologize for the bummer end. It always sucks doing something like this. Trust me, I'm more bummed than all of you guys. I've had the car sitting around for 2.5 months now, not running, and it's bugging the heck out of me. So that's where we're at. Appreciate you guys watching. Consider supporting the channel down below by checking out and buying any of the merch. Again, only do it if you have extra money laying around. Don't feel obligated at all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.